Today my project is returning to a repair I started a while ago, my number 108, which is a Bachmann Santa Fe GP50 locomotive, running number 8759. Apparently the model number is 61252. I had a number of issues with it, I left it aside, and now I'm going to try and get back to it and see if I can get it up and running. Hi YouTubers, welcome to my latest video servicing engaged locomotives, and as I said in the introduction, I'm returning to this one. That could be a theme, you know, here's one I started earlier type thing, which I've had to leave aside. This one here had a couple of issues. The motor was very poor and eventually burnt out. I didn't have one available, and as you can see, there's a couple of broken bits on the bogies. Over the course of time, I managed to acquire a motor from another locomotive I scrapped, and also a couple of bogies resplendid with couplers, medium length at one end and short end at the other, so this will depend on which end of the locomotive it goes on. Okay, first of all, just to make sure everything's okay, I'm just going to run my little probe against the motor, and there it goes. It's only about 4 volts or so, but you can see the motor looks very healthy in both directions. These motors are usually 5-pole with a skewed armature, which seems to make them slightly more efficient. Right, excuse me, take this one out of the way. I'm going to put the motor into the chassis. The motor is provided usually with this kind of plastic clear shield, and the intention is that it helps to insulate the motor against the two-sided chassis. I'm going to build the chassis now. Before I do, I'd just like to demonstrate how these spacers and pillars fit. I put a spacer in here and it sinks into recess, screw through there, and in here you might just be able to see if you can get it on camera. Somewhere is the spacer washer, and that's on both sides. So that's where we're aiming for. Trying to catch both cameras here. There we go. These Bachmann locomotives use the two halves of the body shell as current feed from the pickups to the poles of the motor. And the poles of the motor are butt against a little pip on each half of the chassis. Not sure if you can see that. So this pole here actually touches the chassis at this point. You'll notice that there's a gap here. In fact, there's a little kind of channel, and on the other half you have a reciprocal pip here which connects to that pole. And there's not a lot of room when you're connecting them, and I found that you have to maneuver it. Oh, sorry, I forgot to take off the supporting thing. Let me just pause there. So, as I was trying to say, when you have put the chassis pieces together, this pip has to match that pole, and they go together like this. Now the two halves have to be held apart, and they are held apart by little separating washers that fit one at one end and one at the other, and that keeps them insulated. Now if I hold this carefully to avoid short, this actually should run. So let's see if my words are coming through. And there you can see that touching the chassis causes the motor to run. Drive is affected on these machines by connecting the output from the motor through these dumbbell drive axles into the worm screw of the bogie, and that is done on both sides. So next thing I'm going to do is try and connect all this together and reassemble it and see if we can get this to run. Half of the chassis sits over the motor and the bogies, being careful to make sure that these contact springs are kept outside of the chassis, and then I just try and put a little bit of tension in these screws to kind of start to hold it together, because I have to make sure it's all settled in properly. Like up here, the motor has to sit in, and you basically have to wiggle it around a little bit. Again, just make sure I catch the thread, just to hold it in place. Okay, and this has come out again, which is okay. So now I have to go around all the bogies and make sure that these contact springs are visible underneath the chassis. This one here has slipped inside, so I have to try and carefully manipulate so that I can remove it without damage. And here you may need to remove the screw again. Oops. And the bogie sits in here like so. Right. Now we'll try the screw. And I think the key word is patience and consideration. So that's the rear bogie, okay. Front bogie, this spring has again gone into the chassis. There we go. And in fact, I've now got all 4 contact springs outside the chassis. However, if I can just see closely, I have a little problem with this one. is not only is it outside, but it's been squashed flat, and so it's not going to make good contact. So I'm just going to take this off, realign the contact here, and I'll get it back together again. Well, there's the bogies fitted. I checked the springs are outside, and now I'm going to try and test it. So, got my probe. I'm just going to apply power to the chassis, and you can see the motor is running fine. Now we'll try it from the bogies. Get response there, and there, there, and there. All 4 bogies are looking good. It's as if we may have a GP50 on the track. So let me just bring in my rolling road with my DCC rollers. Right, kill the power for the time being. Alright, there we go. On here, on here, on here. And let's see what happens now. Right, I've got the motor turning, but this bogie isn't going, and this is what I was afraid of. The drive shafts have probably come out. Neither of the bogies are running. Yeah, so somehow or other the drive shafts have become disconnected, and that is a fact. I think I have a little admission to make, and that is, in the process of repairing, I perhaps got the drive shafts mixed up, and the ones I had were very short, and so when the motor was turning it wasn't actually engaging with the drive wheels. So now I think we've got it running. There we go. Yep, that's up and running. And I'm quite pleased that out of a box of bits, oops, so that's my rolling road causing a problem. There we go. I've only got about 6 volts on it. These things are never really fast anyway. So let's wind up a little bit. There we go. I think that's going to look nice in the track. Right, let me put it into the opposite direction. Yeah, great. Great. Okay, so the next step as usual is to put it onto the test track, see how it runs around, and then we'll maybe hook it up to some freight. It's Bachmann, my Repair 108, which is a GP50 in a typical split case Bachmann chassis. And that's running pretty well. I don't see any hesitation whatsoever. I've got a lot of voltage on it. Come around. Doesn't look bad at all. Next time it comes round, I'll set it through the points and make sure that it goes okay. So let me just set some points here and here. Whoops. And let's see if it comes round. Just a bit of voltage there. Yep, there we go. So let's go in that direction. I'll reach over and reset the points. Probably missing the locomotive. There it is. Hopefully all the other points are set okay. Yeah. Very nice indeed. Very nice indeed. Okay, I shall get the body shell on. I have a lamp to fix, and then we'll get some freight trailing behind her for a couple of hours of running and test. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you a couple of hours running and test. I'm going to do it off camera. Well, that seemed to go pretty well. I'm quite pleased the way it ran. I have one little problem with it still, and that is that when I went to fit the bulb had actually broken. In fact, there's little pieces of glass lying about my cutting mat, so I'll have to be careful. But that'll do me just now until I get another bulb I can easily fit it in. But it seemed to run pretty well. It went through the points okay, it picked up the freight okay, so all in all I am quite pleased with my little Bachmann GP50. Thank you folks, I hope you liked that. If you did, you might want to comment, hopefully give me a like. And if you haven't already subscribed to Engaged Repairs, then you can press the little button and the bell for notifications. So until the next time, take care everybody. Looking forward to another set of repairs for this year. But meantime, you know what I say now, it's bye for now.